Morning, folks. You can see there's 5 chairs and only 3 of us, so a couple of our compatriots are just running late, so we might wing it here. I do have it actually. I know our moderator's not here, but I do have the questions here.
Maybe we should just start with some quick intros. You guys
sure.
want to kick it off?
Go ahead.
Abhishek.
Hey everyone, good morning. Good to see so many fresh faces out here. My name is Abhishek Cody. I'm a principal business architect at BNY Mellon. I used to be a data scientist. I realized we need more engineering and path to prod stuff. And we're here to talk about some of the generative AI transformation in banking industries.
Thank you. I'm Goran Ilkanizada. I'm an AVP of Enterprise Innovation at TD Bank Group, based out of Toronto. And my role really is to look out for transformational technologies such as generative AI, metaverse, blockchain, and see how we can apply it across the bank. So excited for this conversation.
Great. My name is Adam Wenchel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Arthur. We're a company that helps with both traditional and generative AI, making it ready for the enterprise, putting in the guardrails and the observability that you need to deploy with confidence. Prior to starting Arthur, I started and ran Capital One's AI team, and so have a deep interest in AI in finance.
Awesome. I do have the questions from our moderator written down, so I can just jump into it, and I'll probably ask myself a question, which might be a little awkward, but it's fine. Okay. So Adam's up first. So Adam, your work at Capital One was focused on AI observability, fairness, and explainability to high-value areas such as credit, UX, cybersecurity, marketing fraud, and financial crimes monitoring. Are we balancing value creation with adequate risk management? And what does the recent executive order mean? Actually, let's just do the first one. Are we balancing value creation with adequate risk management?
I think so, yeah. I mean, when I see financial services adopt AI, there's a deep culture of risk management in financial services. So it's a very big contrast to what you see at some of the large tech companies and companies that are building some of these LLM foundation models, which are clearly put out products that are exciting, but maybe still full of a lot of risk. And so, what we're helping is really bridge that gap with large enterprises in a number of industries, including financial services, so that they can actually take advantage of the power of something like LLMs and generative AI, where the power is clear, but so are the risks. And so we can help mitigate that so you can actually leverage it and feel good about it.
Awesome. And I guess the part 2 to that is, what does the recent executive order in the US mean to you in terms of any changes you are making, and what are some of the foundational best practices for Gen AI that you advise in the FI industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the recent executive order was a really good start. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done, and a lot of, when you read the executive order, it sort of says, hey, we need to figure this out. We'll give this agency 270 days or this agency 90 days. And so certainly, there's a lot of gaps that will be filled in over the course of the next 8 or 9 months. And so that'll have a big impact in how it all shakes out. But I do think it was a good start. And in terms of the, what I think is clear is, like, if you're putting out AI, you're responsible for it, right? And so what that means to me is you need to have the right guardrails and safeguards in place, and you also need to know what it's doing. You need to have really good monitoring. And so those are the areas that we focus on. We don't build LLMs. We either leverage models that our customers have built in-house or third-party foundation models. But we do make sure that the guardrails are there so that you're protected against wrong answers or hallucinations or toxicity or bias, things like that when you put it out.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Abhishek, why don't we go to you first before I ask myself a question. At BNY Mellon, what are you doing from an engineering and architecture standpoint to keep up in the Gen AI space?
Absolutely. So I think we've really kind of drilled it down into a code of conduct. And it's an acronym that's really easy to remember and very powerful, and it's been proven out of experience here. So the C of code of conduct really starts with creating the right teams and the right hubs. So at least at BNY, we are really taking a pod approach, where we are ensuring the existing agile pods are instilled with the right balance of data scientists, data engineers, governance architects within the systems. And there's a different flavor of these pods. There are hub-centric pods, which are extremely data science heavy. So you have ML engineers, LLM experts in those pods, and they're probably 50% data science centric roles. And then you have SME-driven pods, where you dominantly have the subject matter expertise in custody or in treasury services. And then you have additional secondary roles for data scientists who are really supporting and enabling those systems. And then there's a whole third layer of pod accumulation that's happening, where you at least have an advisor to each of the pod with a good AI background. So the creation of foundational creative changes and a small business unit at pods of 10 or 12 people is really making that foundational level changes for us. The second aspect, the O part of it, is really the operating model. Not just BNY, I think we see this across the board. We're seeing in the financial industry a hub and spoke kind of an operational model. So there's centralized teams which are center of excellences, or the hubs are really playing the innovation center roles, and they're kind of really spilling out with a spoke kind of connectivity to each LOBs, corporate functions, product platforms, so on and so forth. So the operation model is this next part. The third part from an architecture perspective also is we are really kind of tapping into the existing software development lifecycle systems, SLDC, PTX processes, and really embedding the delivery mindset from an AI perspective. I think if most of you have done AI, would realize 80% of the projects die out at POC stages, and there's very little cumulative intelligence that really goes down into the future. So we're really trying to embed that into the PTX process or the delivery mechanisms so that that information can be leveraged, and GenAI, to our fortune, has come around to help us with that. And the last part is really engagement and enablement. So and it really takes a village to put something in production in financial services. And a key part of that is, welcome to our fourth panelist, please join us. The last part of it is really engagement and enablement. And I think a key part of the journey is not just uplifting the data science teams, but really uplifting the whole engineering organizations and the banks by themselves. So really designing engagement-friendly incentives and enablement-friendly incentives, and being able to measure some of those things, have really put us on track from an architecture perspective and from a delivery-centric perspective. So the code of conduct seems to be working out for some of our organizations, and hope that can benefit everybody.
That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, so you would have seen we have a new guest on stage, Xiao Chen. Thanks for making it. Our moderator was not able to make it, so I'm just pinch hitting right now. That's why I'm looking at my phone. We already did intros, so maybe I could just pass it over to you for a quick intro.
Sure. My name is Xiaochen Zhang, and I'm the CEO of FinTech for Good, and also the Executive Director of AI 2030. And our mission is to just mainstream responsible AI. And we all know that AI, everyone care about AI, but there are also a lot of risk around AI. And our goal is by 2030, responsible AI as a concept will not be relevant anymore, because it's already mainstream. The all AI need to be responsible. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm going to bring it back to you. The heat's on you, just because we have a question for you as well. What are some of the best practices that you've put together for foundational capabilities for Gen AI in your company, FinTech for Good?
Yeah, so from there, that's, for us, the Gen AI is nothing different from other AI, except the functions from Gen AI, definitely, from the summarization to just the generate code and all that, which are very different from other AI. But from the responsible AI side, that's, this is not different, meaning that AI need to be transparent, AI need to be protecting privacy, and I need to just create benefit for the accessibility, because we all know that the large language model or AI training just take a lot of energy, and then how to just make sure that it can be created in a responsible way, and AI need to just create accountability, and where that's no matter what solution you are working on, and then from the governance structure, and also make sure that your customer being protected properly, and also AI need to just also create a fair result. And we all heard a lot of different stories. We are in the finance stage, and it's very clear that AI related or generative AI related solutions, which no matter from lending to investment, where that's we have already heard stories where that's it could just create bias the result, and based on your race, gender, and other identities one may have. So how to just make AI to also address the fairness related challenge, and fair lending already is a very important practice out there, and but in other areas which AI just started to create customer-facing solutions and how to just also install that pillar. So those are the 5 key pillars that when we are working with the customers and partners to build Gen AI solutions, and then we always focus on privacy, transparency, fairness, sensibility, and accountability. And those are the things which are really critical. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm going to awkwardly ask myself a question now that the moderator was going to ask me. So I'll try and rephrase it so it's not as weird. What did we learn at TD as we built up our recent innovation framework, which is a structured and repeatable process to develop innovation across the bank? And we sort of call it colloquially Big I innovation that we use towards Gen AI. So I describe it overall as really a test and learn approach, like especially with a new emerging technology like generative AI, as exciting as it is, and there's a ton of opportunities, I'd say there's equally as many risks. And so our approach is really to identify use cases, test them out in a safe way, not launch it at prod or scale or to customers, really leveraging colleagues to test it out in a safe way. And I think most large organizations are doing it in a similar way. What I will say that's been really cool as well is part of our innovation framework, we also have like a grassroots across all 90,000 colleagues. We have an idea platform called Ideate. And so colleagues can send in ideas. And what's been really cool, without even prompting them, that's an interesting choice. Without prompting them, they've just come forward with like a ton of ideas. And this ranges from everyone from frontline colleagues to senior executives that use this platform. And it's really been interesting to see the grassroots sort of interest in using generative AI tools. The thing I hear the most often is just give us access to the tool. Just like watch what we can do. And that's what we're doing in sort of a safe way, again, not with customers. And we've been testing this out with call center colleagues, developer productivity, a lot of different use cases that I'm sure you're all familiar with. But that's really it, as a large financial institution, really being stewards of customers, privacy and financial health. It's really important that we do it in a slow and responsible way. And so that's how we've been approaching it. Okay, back to my moderating duties. I'm going to have questions that we're going to kind of just do as for everyone. And so Adam, I'll come back to you if you want to pass over the mic. So let's just talk use cases because this seems to be the top. I've heard some organizations say, we've got 1,000 use cases. We've got 200 use cases. It seems like it's a bit of an arm race. What are the top use cases you're seeing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically when we talk to a large enterprise in financial services, we'll walk in and they'll have hundreds for sure, and they'll have usually a list of prioritized ones, maybe like a top 25 that are, to your point, typically people start off with stuff that's not customer facing just because of the risk. They want to use it internally first. And so, but there are like customer servicing type things where you're assisting call assistant. That's, in consumer banking, that's obviously typically the largest cost center. We're seeing actually a ton of interest on the investment side around kind of accelerating investment research and analysis, and even in very cautious ways, making research or making recommendations and things like that. And so I think there's a lot of leverage there. So those are some of the top use cases. There's all manner of back office activities that can be accelerated, including like financial crimes and things like that, AML. So yeah, we're seeing a pretty broad group, and that's just within financial services. Obviously seeing a lot outside of that.
Very cool. I know I constantly get folks nudging me about the recent Morgan Stanley use case where, they did the big launch with OpenAI. So that one's definitely an interesting one in terms of the investment research. Abhishek, how about yourself?
I think I will definitely qualify the categories of hundreds of use cases across the bank. But I think it's been very important to figure out a path to really filter down and prioritize the most strategically valuable ones. And I think one lens that I'll add to it is we've at BNY, at least, our CEO, Robin Vince, has announced a 3-structure approach to all things we do. And the first pillar is really being more for our clients. And I think client-facing intelligence, client-facing competitive analysis, basket analysis, product, and all of these things really formulate a huge part of the demand side. But to the point that Adam just made, it comes with a higher amount of risk. So typically they do come up as a first set of priority of use cases, but they do get transformed into internal use cases that then eventually will go out into the clients. The second pillar is really operate better. And I think that's where the organizations control the fate of these solutions as well, because they have a sense of what is the operational cost of a process or an activity, and they're able to see what efficiency gain can be brought in through Gen AI with minimal risks involved. And sample use cases really there are, enhancing your payment initiation document processing systems of different kinds, of varied kinds. That's like a most untapped space with traditional AI across the banking industry from what we see from even the public reports. And essentially just being able to kind of streamline some of these things will really kind of start giving us much confidence and build up the muscle to really go client-facing with some of these use cases. And the third pillar is really power our culture. And I think the developer productivity tools, the Copilot tools, or the Duet AI variations of that, all are different ways of saying assisted expertise. And I think that is one foundational area where we are seeing a whole new openness that's coming up, because a lot of I think a couple of years ago, even some of these stages, people spoke about the sophisticated software engineering jobs being foolproof from automation and deep knowledge SME roles being proof from automation. But I think that's really starting to change. So it's not just developer and expertise collaborativeness, but I really want to highlight that a key complexity in the financial services industry is the nuances of the information understanding diversity, jurisdictions, and different landscapes of those. So Gen AI is really able to kind of bring together some of those cases which were in the long-term horizon into a short-term horizon. So at least those are the three pillars-based use cases that we are seeing. And I think, again, the operational use cases tend to get the first preference just because we control the fate of them. They're less low on a risk scale, and they're much more measurable compared to the other ones.
That's excellent. It's great to hear the similarities, to be honest. Xiaochen, how about yourself?
Yeah, and definitely from the AI use case and the non-Gen AI use case are still dominating in the financial service industry. And the reason is very easy because many of financial institutions have been doing it for quite some time. And it's just Gen AI introducing new capability, new possibility, and many of the existing data analytical or data science team are just bringing Gen AI to just working on the use case that they have been working on in the past. And then that's interesting. We also see very similar trend that a lot of organizations start from the internal use cases, where that's because it's a financial service industry, because it's heavily regulated, and the examiners or regulators are not ready. And if you just start the Gen AI from beginning and then customer facing, naturally that's even you have product, you may not be able to launch it for a long time before the regulators are ready. So yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of Gen AI related use cases are more internal, non-customer facing. And from that category, and we can see from us mainly three bigger categories. The first is from the risk management, and many of the financial service industry are using AI to just do risk management. A lot of any financial institution is a risk management organization. So there that we have seen tons of very interesting, exciting use cases. And second piece is for their core business, no matter it's insurance or it's banking or it's credit union or it's investment firm, and a lot of them are because their customers are asking them to just offer different type of services which are more customized, which are more time spend less time and then less costly and with better return. So then Gen AI are being used for those core products that they are offering. The third category that we have seen is more as create new type of services which have never been there before, and then they through this that they see the opportunity to just introducing new product. Last month that I was in the Moody's roundtable, and it was very interesting that where Gen AI, a lot of concern from the financial service industry using Gen AI is around hallucination or use of other data that those cannot pass financial regulators compliance requirement, where that's Moody leveraging Gen AI, but then using all the Moody data to help researchers to just do research in a way which was, when I just saw the product and all that was tremendous. It's very exciting where that you can leverage any researcher can really leverage the data from Moody and then create your reports within that short period of time with that kind of quality and which you will never see that in the past. And I see a lot of such kind of new products are offered with much lower cost and all. That's really exciting. Yeah.
Excellent. And I'd just describe at TD, there's probably two verticals how we're approaching use cases. One is just defining sort of horizons of exploration, and Abhishek, you kind of mentioned this as well. The first horizon being sort of that like R&D, just test and research, really no commercial use, just sort of like skunkworks R&D, just to understand the tech and get folks comfortable with it. The next horizon being where we're more comfortable bringing it forward like an actual use case to colleagues and really emphasizing colleague productivity. And then the third being customer facing. Transparently, we're not really in that customer facing space yet. I don't think most large organizations are. We're really focusing on that research to truly understand the value and get over sort of that hype cycle and really understand where there's value generation. And then it's really colleague facing use cases where we have like a cross section of colleagues. And then in terms of actually, because we don't want to limit it just to me and my team sort of being in a little silo coming up with use cases. I have a team of about 10 product owners, and we go out there and we meet and have relationships with every line of business across North America. And we're hosting both a combination of learning sessions and actually like ideation. A lot of it you'll see are consistent themes, but if you think of the nuances in the FI space of like LOB by, like if you talk to the wealth team versus the insurance team, like there are very unique, like the claims process is very different than a traditional operations or an estates process. So we're learning a lot of the nuances. I would say we're not there yet to actually launch those sort of like niche value creation opportunities, a lot more in that space around like what will give us the biggest bang for our buck at a broad scale, which is why we talked about like the contact center and call center colleagues frontline and also the developer productivity. You're really going to get the best bang for your buck there. I want to introduce our moderator, Sushma. Welcome. Hopefully it wasn't too stressful getting in. I'm going to relinquish the duties back to you. We're just at I think we were just going to get to the talent section because we just chatted about use cases.
The talent section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and thank you so much. And as you talked about, thank you so much, Varun. And as you talked about talent,
I don't think we're getting either.
It's not working.
Try that one.
Does that work?
That's perfect.
Okay, thank you. Hi. So as we talked about talent, I think it's about preparing the organizations. And so, like Adam, I think you have a lot of experience with Capital One.
Yeah. Into the mic. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. You have a lot of experience with Capital One and the Arthur AI that you have established now in terms of observability and fairness. And so how are you building talent in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, how's that? There we go. Absolutely. I think talent, there's a lot of things that people want. So there's a limited amount of talent. To some extent, you have to grow your own. And so that's a big part of it, hiring people who coming out of school with the right aptitudes and things like that. But then on top of it, attracting talent, it really comes down to understanding what motivates people. It's not just money. It's also things like being able to do some research, participate in publishing papers, be part of a community of other kind of people doing interesting AI work. Those are really important to the top AI talent. So if you can create, once you hire the first handful, oftentimes we see large organizations starting with like a strong central team, whether it's a COE or just a dedicated AI team, because that creates community and it's much easier to attract additional talent if they feel like they're among kind of a community of like-minded peers. And then, there's a big, in AI, there's a really interesting interplay between the academic world and the commercial world, much more than I think other technology areas. And so we see a lot of, collaborating with like graduate students and researchers in the university world, just to keep it really stimulating, to create a stimulating environment for people. So I think that's an essential part if you want to attract top AI talent, to really create that kind of intellectually stimulating environment for them.
Right. Hi, Xiaochen. In FinTech for Good, what are your experiences across the globe as you think about talent and building organizations for the future?
Yeah, and definitely this is actually our core focus, and to address the AI talent, especially responsible AI talent gap. And typically as of now, that's in any AI project, when many of the research firm did research, and across a globe, and within one AI project you have 30 data scientists or engineers, while you have one person who know about ethics. And think about, if a product which really impact everyone, where that you only have one person in the team and who know about, and then what that product could look like. And so responsible AI as a new job category is, require a lot more talents. But what does it mean by responsible AI? Who are the talents and what kind of skill set, what kind of certificates? So those, when you go back to the universities, and it's very clear that engineering school or the science and humanity related education are so divided, where that's engineers don't have the humanity side of the knowledge, and humanity side don't know the coding. So finally, that in the future, any job is really a human-machine collaborative intelligence. And then we do need a new type of talent, and which their skill set and need to be defined differently. So that's why we started working with many universities and also industry organizations to create different responsible AI sector-specific training course certificates. And actually today and at 4 p.m. we have one training course on responsible AI for financial professionals, because we believe that in each sector where that responsible AI need specific expertise, and those I think is very important. Where that we need to bring the thought leaders and who have been there, done that, together with the researchers, the academic, bring the right concept, the essential knowledge, then combine them together to create a new type of role, like responsible AI officer, AI auditor, and those kind of new roles are really emerging, and it require a lot more attention from the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned two things, like one is the engineering side and the business side. I want to talk to Abhishek a little bit about on the engineering side, the best practices that you've established.
Yeah, I think we spoke about that at the very beginning, just adding a talent angle to it. I think I strongly agree with Adam's point on culture, right? So really a key feature of retaining some of the talent is not the primary drivers, but the secondary drivers, which is really culture. And that's why we've, I think, shifted our view from an individual data scientist to a pod-based structure, right? Pods actually are mini culture zones that start building some of that community behaviors. And I think the blurring of lines with the research and these things. So I think very recently, I think we really drilled down and kind of broke it down to a formula on how you can really retain some of the AI talent given the huge risk in the space. So number one is having few superstars. Right? I think there is a lot of objective, perceptive aspects to it that really have to kind of be considered, and a bit non-traditional approach, but that's become a kind of a working formula in certain spaces. And I think we know some of the big superstars in on the Twitter and on LinkedIn you can see out there. The second aspect is really having that cohort, right? So you don't want to hire just one person in a location or in a team. You want to hire a small pod that a culture and community can build out, because a lot of the data science problems may not be relatable to pure engineering folks or pure business folks. So you need really that bounce off culture that can be built in that system. And the third piece is really, really not just relying on people only. I think that was a hard thing that we really learned through our systems. It's not just relying on one person or a small set of groups to tell us what are the principles of responsible AI, but starting to codify them into our processes and essentially our platforms. And that could be vendor platforms or internal ones, but what that's happening is you're kind of creating a white glove service for somebody who's trying to do data science versus creating a hike. The whole idea is to tilt the elevation so that it's at least comfortable enough for data scientists to know what they need to do, what they want to do, versus going through a whole cycle of FOMO and being like, I need to know somebody to kind of get something done. So I think some of these pieces coming together, it's a bit of a chance right now, but we are working through that.
Right. I have a question for Goran.
Sure.
I think when you established the innovation framework in TD, I think if you can talk a little bit about how you brought the organization along, which could, help the rest of us.
For sure. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning. I'd love to just tag on to the talent question, because I have observed an interesting phenomenon specifically with generative AI as we've gone out. Is I know there's an arms race for talent that's like the data scientists, and I think we're really fortunate at TD. In 2016, we acquired an AI focused company called Layer 6, and they're really taking the charge for us in terms of building out our strategy and all that. And I think that'll continue. There'll continue to be an arms race and all that for top talent. What's been really cool is I think this is the first technology where the tech itself is democratizing learning about it. And as we're going on these sort of like what we call line of business ideation sessions, like I'll be in a meeting with like a brand new teller in a branch, and they're like, I did all this research using ChatGPT. It's just such a tangible technology, and they're using it to teach themselves, and they're coming forward with fully formed thoughts that you would typically expect more of like a data scientist to show up with. So I think that's been really interesting and touches on the fact that really the tech has democratized the learning behind it and demystified a bit of what goes behind. Because someone showed the demo, they're like, look, I created a website and I asked it to teach me as if I was a fourth grader how large language models work, and then like dumb it down even further than that. And so like I think that's just been incredible to see.
Yeah, I think the democratization takes us a different path. And I'm going to ask you a very, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, Adam. What does the executive order mean to you?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but I think that really what it means is just sort of accountability is coming, and I think people in financial services already feel accountable for the models they put out, but I think that's going to be strengthened over the next 6 or 7 months as more of it kind of the framework gets kind of specified and put into motion, and so I think, while there is already a culture of accountability and risk management in financial services, a lot of it needs to be updated. And so a lot of like model risk processes tend to be very manual, which was fine 15 years ago when models didn't change that much and there were a lot of linear regression and relatively simple and interpretable models. It's not very effective when you move into a modern kind of AI machine learning type paradigm where these models are way too complex to like understand at an intuitive level, and they're changing and they're updating all the time. And so I think that it's a good opportunity for people to kind of really take a look at what they're doing and sort of modernize their practices and bring the same kind of sophistication that they're bringing to the AI and the modeling side to the oversight and monitoring and guardrail side.
Yeah, I think a big part of this change is not just building in best practices, but also literacy. So I want to talk to each one of you about, if all of you can, one by one talk about how you're bringing the rest of the organization from a literacy standpoint in terms of what this means. What are some of the steps that you're taking? Xiaochuan, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. And number one thing is that we don't believe that we can do it alone. So then from the AI 2030 in general, this is a partnership initiative where we actually work with over 200 responsible AI leaders from industry and also from academies. So in that, we have the right skill sets and from addressing different pillars within responsible AI, and also bring the technical and the non-technical together, and where that's to design the framework. And the second piece is where we have partners, and a lot of partners are really in the AI race, but then from the responsible piece, which is they really want it, but they don't know how to do it.
Yes.
So then we actually working with a lot of partners to bring our responsible AI framework, helping them to just customize that to make them as their responsible AI framework. And then any of this is, technology is around the people, technology, and process, where that's, when we talk about AI, we are not only talk about the technology, we also talk about, how to just bring, help them to redesign their process, redefine the work, and also to just reskill the talents and bring the right, experts and expertise in front of different teams and all that. And I was just reminded that we have 5 minutes yeah.
Okay, Adam, you?
Do we want to do questions or?
Yeah, we can do questions.
Awesome.
Yes.
Let's see.
Yes, you mentioned guardrails earlier, and you mentioned subject matter expertise, which in my experience in the banks is in people's heads or very disorganized set of data. So I'm just trying to square that how would you specifically do guardrails in getting data back that you can trust? It seems like the checker has to be smart as more smart than the actual language model. So how do you actually make that work, especially in subject matter?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, what guardrails should you put in place? Like, how informed do the guardrails have to be by the subject matter expertise, and how do you pull that off? Is that essentially the gist of it? Yeah. So I think there's some general purpose guardrails that are kind of agnostic, right? So basic definitions of toxicity or leaking PII data or hallucinations are all things that there's sort of like universal definitions for. Now, with something like hallucinations, there can be some tuning that's done by experts to really kind of get the full performance. Same thing with toxicity. If you think about, like, obviously if saying curse words, that's not good in probably any context. But there's things like that are not acceptable in HR, like talking about a job candidate's family status, that are very much informed by the subject matter expert. And so, when we work with customers, we typically have a set of, like, these are common guardrails that, like, almost no matter the use case, you're going to want to put in place, and then allow them to layer kind of use case specific ones that do require that subject matter expertise to really make sure are appropriate for that use case.
If I may just add to that a little bit, I think one fundamental principle that can really help us there is the co-pilot approach, right? So you don't create any AI solutions that are autonomous, that always go human-centric design. So that's foundationally a big principle that's helped us. And in addition to what Adam was saying, I think there's a few things that are really emerging from some of our experiments. One is building ground truthing to everything, especially generative AI, which has a higher proclivity towards hallucinations and all of that. So at a micro level, things like self-reflection, sourcing all the information, and ensuring that somebody's blue ticking or green charging some of these information has been key. At a macro level, the way some of these things are emerging out, because the nuances are too complex. There's less rules and more exceptions in the SME scenarios. So we are starting to build in generative AI tools to actually act as adversarials, as reflectors, not just from a micro level perspective, at macro level, right? Model risk groups are essentially building their own intelligence gathering from whatever written down information that they have. And you kind of use them as a service that bounces off standard set of known questions. And it has to be an organically growing system, because this is going to be a moving target and things will emerge out. And the biggest advantage of ChatGPT is the emergent property. And we have to ensure that we use that emergent property to our benefit, right? So at a principal level, making sure you're building some of those systems. I think the model risk groups are becoming development groups in this context, and really kind of leveraging some of these techniques to challenge existing state of the art. And whatever is the highest or the biggest challenge goes to a human co-pilot to really answer those questions versus answering all the standard ones.
Yeah, and when we work with customers, and we always just looking at the process from beginning. Before you build it, we provide them a list of questions. For example, do you know whose data are you using for the training? And can you explain the result to your customer, to your regulators? There are tons of questions that before you build, you need to answer. When you are building it, and we ask about the governance structure, where that if AI create a result which have unfair result or other type of consequence, that's the leadership in that team have the authority to stop it immediately, or you have to just collect what is the governance structure and who is if the chief responsible AI officer and report to a business line leader, and then that's really give you the right structure to just make sure that that consequence is being managed properly. And after that, if you already have an AI or general AI solution which have that non-responsible related result? And then do you have the tools to clean it up and to make changes in a cost-effective way? And who have the tools? What kind of cost benefit that you can look into? And for example, the PI related, how can you clean that data in a cost-effective way? And there are also different tools, method, and also best practice. You need to just get your team, be aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah, financial services is highly regulated. So how do you navigate innovation of AI and the regulators?
Oh, this is the $1,000,000 question, if I may. So I think some of these are really kind of building innovation in some sense, in a very carefully constructed, limited fashion. I think some of the major banks have just outrightly banned access to ChatGPT-like interfaces. I think that really puts out the intent out there, right? That the banks really want to be organized and careful with the way they're approaching it. And I think a few things are the process things. So there are things like data. Data is reviewed before the first experiment happens, right? Ensuring the chief privacy officer, the data officers, and the organizations are in there. But that also has to scale. So starting to embed that processes into your systems, your internal platforms that orchestrate it, is kind of the trick of the trade at this stage, I would say, to get it, because a lot of the banking organizations are working towards triple-digit or thousands of models in production, and it's still very bespoke processes. So some of that is really balancing that act. And the second thing is being extremely, extremely careful of what's going into production. I think the model risk groups here come step up, and we kind of, as developmental teams, we are very grateful for that, because we want to make sure all the priority risk testing is happening almost in parallel while the development is happening. And no matter, even if we create the best equivalent of financial GPT, we want to make sure it passes those tests before it even sees the day of light, right? So I think at this stage, I would just say it's an art more than a science, but I think we're figuring out how systems can start playing a bigger role versus people. And that's the only way we see at least some of these can scale. Otherwise, the distillation of intelligence would be extremely hard to expand over a large organization, if I may.
I think we're at time. Yeah.